before my diagnosis, a challenge every single day. I didn't realise why my sleep patterns were so terrible. I didn't realise why I interrupted people so often. I thought I was just rude. It was a lot of self-attack, Again, one of the traits of a neurodivergent ADHD person is the thriving around deadlines. So that in itself creates the fight or flight situation, or the fight or flight mentality. If you're working on a deadline all the time, that never leaves you. So me thinking, I just like to be busy, I like to choose my own working hours. Before the diagnosis, that made sense as an entrepreneur, a go-getter, but I was putting myself at risk because I was, as I said, going into a fight or flight situation where I was always on the adrenaline. I was always exhausted. I was always catching my tail.
Welcome to Great Conversations with Nicola O'Donoghue, the podcast where everyday individuals share their extraordinary stories of struggle, success, and the wisdom they found along the way. In this week's episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the incredible Rian Bailey-Weir. From a young carer navigating the complexities of his sexuality to emerging as the passionate founder of A&B Marketing, Rian's journey is one of resilience and self-discovery. In his mid-30s, Rian learned that he is neurodivergent, adding another layer to his unique story. What I love about this episode is that the overarching theme is love. Rian vulnerably shares his struggles and triumphs, openly sharing his personal and professional evolution with acceptance and kindness. Over the years, Rian has battled with self-compassion as he embraces his identity as a neurodivergent queer with unwavering positivity. This is a conversation that explores the depths of love, self-acceptance, and the power of living authentically in the face of life's challenges. Enjoy. Rian Bailey-Weir, welcome to Great Conversations. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
The last guest, I have to say, left you the most beautiful question, and I'm really excited to start with it. So, Rian, your question is, if you could share one lesson about love, what would it be?
One lesson on love. It's personal. And that sounds like quite a blanket statement to make with such an important question. Love can take shape in every single thing. So whether it's love for a family member, whether it's love for a romantic partner, love for a friend, it's personal. What I mean by it's personal is that you don't need to be confined by the typical description and exclamations of love. Like, what is love? What it is to me is completely different. So one lesson that I've taken from understanding my emotions is that love can show itself in different ways, and it's just about embracing it in the way that's comfortable to you and how you can show that to other people.
And so tell me then, how does it show up in the different parts of your life then as you talk about love being personal?
Gosh, everywhere. Flipping heck. I think love being personal is a very emotional person. I pride myself on being empathic. I'm an empath through and through. So I feel emotions at the tough times as well as the beautiful times. So how it's presented itself for me, love, is my daily life. I recently, over the past year, was diagnosed with a neurodiverse condition, ADHD, inattentive combined. So it kind of showed why I experienced emotions. It explained why I experienced emotions a bit, in my opinion, a bit more heavily than other people. So I go through my day quite literally falling in love with things, and that sounds really daft, I know. But I go through my day falling in love with things, falling in love with people, falling in love with actions, falling in love with thought processes. So yeah, that's how I experience love personally.
It's sounding like it's baked in connection as well, like love, it's personal, but it sounds as if there's also a connection link there as well. And geez, like being diagnosed, I hadn't realized that you were diagnosed as neurodivergent only a year ago. So, I mean, how was that? like, what was the impact of learning that, in your mid-30s? Yeah, what was the impact of that for you?
I'll be honest, terrifying.
Mm,
Terrifying, heartbreaking, um, difficult, to say the least. It was, as I said, this time last year, it was October, November, that I got my full diagnosis from the ADHD Foundation. Incredible, incredible organisation. And they've done so much incredible work over the past year where there's been such an upsurge in referrals for neurodiversity as well. Um, I, it was really strange, if I'm honest, if I can go back to where I first started to place my feet around neurodiversity and kind of understand that it could be part of my personality and my brain
mm,
traits, really. Um, I just thought that I was quirky.
yeah.
I just thought that I just liked being busy. I just liked deadlines. I'll be honest, I just thought I was a bit stupid. I thought that I didn't really get things as easy as other people, or I thought that uh, I found things a bit too difficult,
Mm,
even though I know that I've got a master's under my belt. I've always been a high achiever, but it's always been a bit more challenging, I felt, than what other people were showing.
mm,
So it was difficult. Um, I went into a very dark place for the first few months because I
mm,
thought, what's wrong with me?
yeah.
Why me?
Mm,
30s, you should not be experiencing this. Like, I
mm,
should have experienced this journey, this unpicking at the start of my life, really.
yeah.
Um, so to answer the question, it was challenging,
Mm,
difficult. It was a lot of reimagining who I am,
mm,
thinking about my actions, understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing and how to put things in place. But it wasn't just about me, that's the thing. It was about my family, my partner, the people around me, my team. How do I help them, my clients? How do I make sure that they understand me as much as I understand them so
mm.
that we're working together in a collaborative way and it doesn't seem disjointed for whatever reason from something that I was going to say arguably, but not even arguably, more often than not, I can't control. A journey, definitely.
I was actually going to say as well, I'm sure there was a huge part of it that you had to understand yourself as well. Because as you say, you've been carrying this identity with of who you were. And it sounds like with quite a bit of judgment in that. And then suddenly you get this diagnosis, which then I'm assuming fundamentally changes your perspective of yourself and your relationship to yourself as well. So how did you navigate that?
Again, with a lot of challenge, with a lot of
Mm,
difficulty. Um, so my actual first, as I said, my first kind of touch onto understanding neurodiversity was through TikTok. Every single bit of content was what I believed at the time was my personality. It was
mm,
my little traits, as I said before, it's my quirky behavior. But then I started to realize that, well, okay, this video has 100,000 likes. This video has 2 million likes. Okay, that's not my personality now. That's everyone else's personality that has ADHD. Oh gosh, okay, cool. So that journey was the unpicking of actually who am I? What
mm,
do I need to do? Again, going back to what I said before about everyone around me as well. How do I interact with people now that I've got this diagnosis? And I mean,
mm.
ultimately, a diagnosis doesn't change who I am. I've
Yeah.
always had this. I have had the same brain since day dot.
Mm.
However, try telling your brain that.
Yeah. And it's the journey to acceptance, isn't it? I mean, what you're like that, geez, I hadn't even realized that the realization that you might be neurodivergent came to you from TikTok. And that I guess is in some ways the power, like it's a thin line, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of people that are self-diagnosing through TikTok videos, and so now everybody's labeling themselves as such. And I think there's a danger in that. And what I'm hearing is, in your case, it actually served as it opened a door for you to step through to better understand who you are and how your brain works and thinks, and
Definitely.
operates. And so, in that way, it sounds like it was really good. But also, I want to acknowledge your courage in doing that, because actually it does also take a lot to sort of pause and to do that introspection and be like, oh, hold on a minute, maybe this is not who I am. To question your identity, to want to go and do more research and get answers is a really courageous thing to do, Ryan, and not just
Thank
giving
you.
that lip service, it genuinely is. So I want to
Mm.
acknowledge that for you. And building on that, I would love to understand more about neurodivergency, because it's not unique. I think, is it something like 30% of the population are neurodiverse? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel as if sort of the way that businesses are set up and the way that, relationships are, there's often not space for that. I think we all assume that we
Mhm.
think and act in the same way. And so, like, can you take me through and explain what it is like as a neurodivergent person?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was trying to kind of elaborate on the one word that keeps on just flying around my head. Chaos is
Mm,
a good summary, to be honest.
yeah.
So PD, pre-diagnosis, I would say it was actually easier before my diagnosis. As I said, as soon as I realized that this label was attached to me, I started to unpick, I started to intrinsically see myself as almost a different person and take a good look at myself as to why I was doing what I was doing, etc. Um, as I said, before my diagnosis, a challenge every single day. I
Mm,
didn't realize why my sleep patterns were so terrible. I didn't realize why I interrupted people so often. I thought I was just rude. It was a lot of self-attack, a lot of self-attack. Um, Again, one of the traits of a neurodivergent ADHD person is the thriving around deadlines. So that in itself creates the fight or flight situation, or the fight or flight mentality. If you're working on a deadline all the time, that never leaves you. So
mm,
me thinking, oh, I just like to be busy, I like to choose my own working hours. Before the diagnosis, that made sense as an entrepreneur, a go-getter, but I was putting myself at risk because I was, as I said, going into a fight or flight situation where I was always on the adrenaline. I was always
mm,
exhausted. I was always catching my tail. Thankfully, on my diagnosis, I explored the medication route
mm,
um, because that was a good way forward for me. That's personal to me. A lot of people may choose their own path. That chaos is still there. Thankfully, with my medication, with supplements and holistic therapies that I now use as well, that helps to dull down that chaos, to put it to one side. Now it's just a case of making sure that I've got plans in place, to make sure that I've got different routines, make sure I've got checklists, but
mm.
also allowances. I now don't attack myself if I don't do something that I needed to do. The washing, gosh, the washing, I'm pretty sure was meant to be done on Monday. That's still in the wash basket.
It's so powerful, because it's really about love and loving yourself is what I'm hearing. That actually a huge
Definitely.
important step on this journey has been acceptance of who you are, not fighting it, and then choosing to love and embrace that. And what you're talking to is proactively then putting in place daily habits and routines to support you in showing up as your best self. And for me, that's just such a beautiful manifestation of love for yourself. So
Mm,
yay. And
definitely.
what I would love to know is like, how from the other side externally, like business, say businesses, for example, like what are some of the things that they can put in place in order to support people who are neurodivergent as well?
Thank you for that question. Definitely. I think it's a two-pronged answer, if I'm honest. The first for the business people, the business leaders, the line managers, the people that are looking after a team, and the focus is looking after. Let's not forget that. I think business, this may seem naive, this may seem um, juvenile as such. Business, in my opinion, needs personality. Business needs emotion. That's one thing that I have somehow been able to swat away every single time I'm told it, that we need to remove the emotion and the personality from business. I think that's absolute rubbish. My advice to business people that are looking after their team that may have neurodivergent needs is to ask the question, be empathetic, actually care about people. People are not just a number. Yes, you may
Mm.
have X amount of team members that you are looking after, but each one of those people have a life, a personality, have intrinsic pain points, have intrinsic positive points, everything above. So just ask the question, of course. It needs to be treaded lightly to make sure that the other person is comfortable as well. Make sure that you're there, that you show up, that you support your team. Be empathetic.
Yeah.
Actually have that care, that heart. Show that greatness through yourself. Make sure that you're bringing the greatness out of your team as well in their
Mm.
individual capacities.
How have you brought the greatness within you into your life from like when you were young? Tell me about that. Like, what's this? What was your, yeah, what was your journey? Tell me about Rian.
I was a young carer for my mum. She's still with us. Still absolutely adore that lady. Um, I was a young carer from 13, but taking it back even further, I've kind of always had a bit of a turbulent upbringing, shall we say. I mean, not unlike many other people, everyone's experience is very unique, challenging in their own personal ways, definitely. Um, my mum always used to tell me that I was a miracle child, which is really lovely to hear, definitely. My mum, Meryl, unfortunately, she was part of the many female identifying people that experience miscarriages. And she had 8 miscarriages before she thankfully, hopefully, gave birth to me. So when she gave birth to me, the birth itself was absolutely fine. I think I was an absolute giant, all arms and legs, little octopus, she called me,
Oh,
just coming out. And unfortunately, though, the nurses, they'd left a centimetre of placenta in her, which she didn't know at the time. She was experiencing quite a lot of, apologies, trigger warning, she was experiencing quite a lot of bleeding, um, obviously post birth. She went back to the doctors. They saw what had happened. They needed to perform an emergency hysterectomy. So, for all of the kind of experiences that she had for losing the children and then this
yeah.
magical experience of having a child, that was all then ripped away from her again through
Wow.
no fault of her own. So it was a very odd start to
Yeah.
the life of Rian Bailey-Weir.
Yeah.
um, Unfortunately, she actually didn't know that she had a condition where I'm not too familiar with the name, but where she overgrows scar tissue. So similar to psoriasis, where if she has a cut, the scar tissue grows too fast, too much. So when she had the hysterectomy, of course, that started to create its own situation where everything started to heal, but then join her organs together with the scar tissue. Again,
Oh,
she didn't realize all of this was happening. Long story short, over a course of years, she ended up having a couple of laser treatments inside to try and get rid of the adhesions. She had various different operations, unbeknown to the doctors, the medical professionals, and to her, that all of this was creating almost a
more
spider's web.
problems.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
absolutely.
my gosh.
So it was unfortunately when I was 10, 11, that my nan sadly passed away.
Oh my gosh. So then, so that it sounds, when you said that you were a young carer, like it must have been a lot of back and forth, back and forth. So, sort of, I can imagine there was a lot of anxiety in your childhood then. I don't know if it was
Definitely.
maybe as carefree as you would want it to be, like a lot of responsibility and anxiety as you're sort of
Yeah.
navigating through that. And at that, the same time that your mum was getting and your grandma passed and your mum was getting diagnosed, um, what was sort of, where was the space for you? Like, I'm just really curious as like, and your, like, like you discovering who you were and your friends and your joy, and like where was that fitting in your life?
I'll be honest, it didn't. Um, very, I mean, years of therapy has definitely helped to kind of understand that. Absolutely. to no fault of any of my family members,
Mm.
there wasn't time for that. When my nan passed, unfortunately, she was the person that was there for my mum. My granddad, of course, was there implicitly, but had his own struggles, had his own situations that he needed to deal with, of course. So when my nan passed, it was on 11-year-old Ryan's shoulders, really.
Mm.
So to answer your question directly, there wasn't really time
Mm.
for me to have myself. I think quite a lot of my life, I've kind of been second player in the game almost, and that really came to fruition when my nan passed and through the diagnosis of my mum. And then that's when I started to step up, because what else are you meant to do, Nicola? How else
Yeah.
are you meant to, as a child, not look after my mum?
Yeah.
Definitely not. Absolutely not.
And what would you have, I mean, you're right. Like, as you say, you've just sort of, you've got no choice, have you? And what would you have needed back then?
Space.
Mm.
Space. In one word, space. So it was, I think you may have touched on it when you were asking a question just before. I saw a lot of my friends. I saw a lot of people around me enjoying their life, going to parties. And that's not to say, absolutely not to say, I had a great set of friends, an amazing set of friends. I didn't want to burden them, though, is the
Mm.
only thing. I spent a lot of my life lonely, surrounded by people. So I needed space for me to embrace my loneliness, to embrace the Ryan of Ryan. You
Mm.
highlighted it just then. What did I need for Ryan and not Ryan the carer? Well, it was only maybe at the age of 25 that I started to realize, oh, they're two different people. Ryan the
Mm.
carer and Ryan, they're not the same person. And that was a difficult time in itself as well, because when you realize that actually I need to detach myself from this situation, otherwise I'm going to lose it all.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm okay. That's heartbreaking, because now you're severing a tie that you've had for such a long period. You don't know anything else. You're
Yeah.
severing a tie that you've had for such a long period of your life. Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing something against my family? Was all that was going through my brain. So what I needed way back then was space. I had people that I could confide in. I think I just needed to talk to myself rather than just go through the motions. Just,
Yeah.
come on, let's just get on with it. All good then.
Yeah. It feels like as well, it's as you're talking, it's space to be compassionate to yourself as well. Like,
Yeah,
to just stop.
it wasn't my fault. And that's what I
Yeah.
realized.
Yeah.
Absolute space to be compassionate was needed, because I, I didn't know how to be compassionate to myself. I didn't
Mm.
know how to talk to myself, to be friendly to myself, to accept myself. Even as a queer person, I didn't know how to accept myself as a queer person. I was, like many people, I was afraid to be exclusively gay
Mm.
as a young person. So I had this front of, I'm bisexual.
Mm.
I knew that I wasn't. I knew
Yeah.
that I just wasn't ready to take that step into embracing my true identity.
Mm.
And I mean, flashing back, it was a phrase that I was going to say way back at the start of this session, that in the gracious words of our loving lady RuPaul, if you aren't going to love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else, really?
Oh, tell me about it. That has been one of the biggest revelations for me as well.
Mhm.
Is just actually fully loving myself and going into the world me first, which I always
Mhm.
thought was really selfish. And it's not. Yeah, it's the best thing that you can ever do for yourself. And
Definitely.
like what you're talking to as well is this the concept of identity and who we are, because it feels as if it is something that for a lot of people it does naturally unfold over time, because whether it's we don't have the space, we're running away from it, we're shamed, we're scared, like actually just sort of uncovering who we are can take ebbs and flows depending on what else is going on in our life. So as you say, when you were younger and you were looking after your mum and you were Ryan the carer, there wasn't that space, as you say, to explore. I can imagine growing up as a queer person in Southport, there probably wasn't also the space to fully embrace that because of what was going on externally as well. Just with the intolerance that exists within society. So yeah, I can imagine that it has been a huge sort of journey, and even up until now in your 30s, you're still learning about yourself and your identity and who you are as Rian. Um, and so with that, with your, with queerness and that being a huge part of your identity, what's your, well, because who you are makes you beautiful. But what has been your journey in that then? Is that part of your identity? What does that look like for you?
It was a challenge. Embracing
Mm.
my queerness was difficult, especially in the world of business when I thought that I needed to act, be, look a certain way. That really, really took a toll on me. Really, really did.
I spent a lot of my life so ignorant around the lived reality of a queer person because I've just naively assumed that you are given exactly the same human rights that I am as a straight person. And what I'm starting to realize is that both in business and outside of business and the world, you're not. And I think a lot of people are in my camp. I think a lot of people just don't realize that in 2023, you still live with so much prejudice and weight and barriers. And so if it's not too upsetting, like, would you talk to us and explain some of those things so that we're aware of them? And then so that, because I think with awareness then you can do something about it. And I do think a lot of us are just not aware.
Definitely. Yeah. I think I want to start with thank you. Please never feel that you are asking the wrong questions. I think as people that identify as heterosexual, straight curious, I think a lot of people are hesitant to ask the questions. Everything that we need to embrace is around education. To go back to when I was saying about the many challenges of Rian Bailey-Weir, it really was a challenge. I've got a nose piercing, I've got tattoos, queer person, just checking off all of those diverse list. But I used to hide myself, my actions, my quirks, ADHD quirks aside, just my flamboyance. I used to tuck my nose ring up. I used to pull my sleeves down to hide my tattoos. Of course, there's a grey area with personal perception of appropriateness of those type of things. Queerness, however, my flamboyance, I should never have hidden that. So I remember going into many meetings where it was with a client across my career, and I wanted to make sure that I was straight, identifying. What does that mean? Well, it means, if we unpick it, masculine. I wanted to make sure that I was masculine, that I was sat up straight, that I was chest out, everything sound. But that wasn't me. You know me.
What's really interesting to me is that because in the marketing world, one would think that because it's so creative, that there's more space to be and to embrace your flamboyancy, your quirks. And so it's really interesting for me to hear that even in that industry, you still felt this pressure to show up, as you say, masculine. And I'm assuming that, I'm assuming that that's linked to then professionalism, because we're told what to be professional and competent looks like, and what it is that stereotype of, like, I remember from my days as a lawyer, which I could talk about a lot, but the sort of the really dull grey, ill-fitting suits and the skirt that comes just below your knee, like the really unfashionable, but that's what a professional lawyer looked like. And I remember being like, what? Yeah, it's just these stereotypes that we're sort of faced with. So yeah, that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely. That you're sometimes you're not even told, are you? Like how to act a certain way. You see and you pick up how things are done, the status
Yeah.
quo. And you don't want to upset that just in case you upset or rock the boat. And that was always in my mind, Nicola, that I didn't want to rock the boat. And again, this might go back to my upbringing, kind of having to make sure that everything was taken care of, think of all the contingencies just in case. As of course, a young carer, bringing in my neurodiversity, overthinking, empathic, emotional, etc. All of that mixed in created this weird not Ryan. So I
Yeah.
guess we've talked about carer Ryan starting to embrace Ryan, but then embracing Ryan, I moved into professional Ryan, which
Yeah.
again wasn't necessarily Ryan. And again, I just felt that I needed to act a certain way. And I get that is absolutely appropriate for some situations, that maybe buttoned up shirt, something along those lines, tie, suit jacket, that might be appropriate for some situations depending on the other person. And that's one thing that I've always been conscious of, the other person, making sure that we meet in the middle.
Yeah.
However, it never met at the middle. It
Yeah.
was always accommodating the other person.
I was going to ask you that. Like, how would you have wanted to bring your queerness into the workplace?
Good question. Really good question. Talking about my partners, something normal would be to talk about my family in a meeting just for small talk, or to talk about what I did at the weekend, or go into this. There's an incredible night on in Liverpool called Sonic Youtha that's in the Baltic Triangle. I used to go to Sonic Youtha quite a lot. I would never have told anyone in a business meeting about that, even though they would talk about the bars that they went to over the weekend or anything. The reason I didn't tell them about that was because it was a queer night. It was specifically for marginalised communities, or set up for marginalised communities. So I didn't want to even plant the seed that I could be part of a community that would be upsetting the status quo.
Is that what it was? I was going to ask is it the fear? Is that what the fear was? Upsetting the status quo? So because normal, air quote normal, was so ingrained in the business environment, the fear was that anything left of center would have you cast out and would negatively impact your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
If I can just give a direct answer to that for once in my
Yeah.
life, yes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to upset people around me at my own detriment.
Yeah.
And again, that's just a golden thread, it seems, through my life until past couple of years, where I've made sure that I put myself first, making
Yeah.
sure I accommodate those around me, of course. That's who I am as a person. But putting myself first, thinking of myself, looking at how my greatness can actually help people around me, rather than upset the status quo or create conflict or anything like that. Create upset because they're not used to something.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange realization that kind of appeared, and it appeared from speaking to people. As I mentioned before, educating myself. I'll be the first to admit that I was very intrinsically homophobic, that I did not like being, at the time, identifying as a gay person, because I did not like the connotations behind that. But it's quite common that people do think that queer phobia is not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
It really is still there. It's just blanketed with initiatives, gay pride. I mean, how many organizations
Rainbow flags.
love to change their logo to a rainbow?
Exactly. I was having a conversation with another business woman, and she is married to another woman and they have two children. And she was at a network event recently, and someone asked her about her partner, and she said usually she doesn't name her partner, and this time she did. And then the guy turned his back on her and walked away.
Bonkers. I
So
don't mean to
it's
uh,
horrendous. I
that
was I was
reaction, but
I was like ready to hunt this man down like
mhm.
weeks later and just like tear a strip off. I'm like, what the like? And so this is why I'm so grateful to you coming on to Great Conversation and having this conversation with me, because it's like what you're saying. I think, there's a lot of people, myself included, naively thought that homophobia had not gone, but just, had just didn't. I thought that with education and with the fact, I don't know why I keep saying we're in 2023, but I feel like as humanity, we just need to do better. Like, have we not evolved? Is there not, like, I naively thought that there was, like, again, all we need is love. Why does it matter? I keep going back to this. Ryan, I genuinely don't care who you choose to love. Like, it's your queerness is a part of you. It's not the reason why I love or reject you. And so it just bothers me that for a lot of people it still is. It bothers me that you still show up in environments where you feel you have to hide that part of your identity, otherwise you're going to be punished or rejected, or we're still physically attacked.
Yep.
And I know what you're saying about change takes time. And I would love to, and I don't want to put the responsibility back on you. And I still am going to ask you the question. Like, for people who are maybe like me, like to see themselves as allies, we're just blindly naive of the stuff that was still going on. What are some of the things that we can do, like within businesses? What are some of the things that we can start to do that, as you say, is not about changing your freaking logo and, on Pride Month and pretending that you're an ally when you're not? Like, what are the things that businesses and organizations can start to do to build that psychological safety within their organization so that their employees feel safe to show up?
It's a really impactful question that has a lot of nuances towards the answer. And I think it starts with, ironically, asking the question. Asking the question to your teams, to the people around you. What's happening? Do you feel safe? Let me know. If not, just by the way. Having that just on the radar. Being in the meetings, for example. If you notice, like, again, one of my traits from my ADHD is my hyper-aware mentality. So I notice so much when I'm going along just my day-to-day life, and I'm able to pick up on things, and I'm really grateful for that superpower. Other people find that quite difficult, I think, to notice little things where people are uncomfortable, where people are finding it challenging. Regularly just asking the question, is there anything else I can help with, by the way? How's everything at home? I know it's a bit of a personal question. How's everything at home? Again, this goes back to what we were saying before about business doesn't need to be emotionless. We spend so long so much time of the day, so much time in our lives in the workplace. Why would we not want to make that as enjoyable as possible for us as well as the other person?
Do you know, the one thing that is popping into my mind is what you said right at the beginning when we asked the question of love. I feel as if it's choose love. It's just the slogan, because when you talked about love being personal, I feel like that's exactly what you're advocating for here, is that it's about embracing the human and actually getting to know people on a personal level of who they are personally, rather than generically a team or generically a group of employees. It's actually choosing love over choosing productivity or over choosing cash flow. But it's choosing love. It's choosing to sort of step into that space of seeing people as humans and individual, and giving them time, and giving them your time. And I know that a lot of people, when we're not encouraged and educated to be emotionally intelligent enough to hold that. I think also the way that the world is always on, we do have very little time. And I think that there is just there's the fear of, how far do you go with that? Because it is a place of work as well. So, we're not here there's only, like, it's not, you're not their parents. It is a place of business, and we ultimately come here and we are paid to get a job done. And I still don't think that should strip it of what you're talking to, is that personal relationship and love. I still feel as if there's a space for that.
Again, ask the questions. Because if you don't ask the questions, you don't know the answers. You don't know what you don't know. And if someone's struggling, you could be that change that they needed.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going through people's minds, what's going through people's lives. And again, just to, we've not talked about me for at least 4 seconds. So just to flashback to my struggles. Thankfully, I've had the people asking the right questions when it has been the dark times, when it has been too difficult to go on. I'll be honest. There've been a couple of times that have been an extreme struggle. By asking the question to the people around you, even in a business environment, you could be that difference of quite literally life or death for people. Just showing that care.
What is that question?
Is everything all right? Are you okay? How are you today? However the question's formatted, however is natural.
I love what you're saying, and I want to build on that. It's asking, are you okay? And listening. Like, I think, and we can listen with our ears, or we can actually listen, because oftentimes a lot sits behind like the delivery of what's being said rather than what is being said. So I have a closing tradition on this podcast where I ask all of my guests, what is something that other people value that you don't?
The rigidity of routine. Things need to be fluid. Things being life. COVID happened. If we were so rigid, we were so rigid over COVID, and look what happened. Life has fundamentally changed. We need to move into a more fluid approach to working life, to personal life. We need to make sure that we're adaptable, but also that we're looking around us, that we're actually taking in people's emotions. We are being empathetic to those around us, because things could change at the drop of a hat. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So the rigidity of routine, I think that's a very good thing, especially for people with neurodivergent traits, having routine, of course. But going back to when I said that I used to beat myself up if I didn't do the washing or something like that, it's not the end of the world. There's so many more things going on at the moment that we need to be focusing our energy and time onto. So I think, yeah, definitely. Other people, I believe, have a very strong focus towards a rigid routine and processes, and it does this, then does this, then does this. That works for AI. That works for something that isn't human. It doesn't always work for humans, though, especially when we are identifying, embracing our individuality.
Yeah. That's a brilliant answer.
Mic drop.
My God. You can mic drop that. You can mic drop that any day of the week. I love it.
Thank you.
Rian, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing and spreading the love. I felt it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you to the amazing individuals who make great conversations possible. My editor, Stian Moritz, musician Jamie Jenkin, and our incredible guests for their openness. Make sure to check out our website, integrate.net, which has all the resources you need to live a happier, healthier, less stressful life. Sending you so much love. Bye for now.